Since you entered primary flight training, you have become fairly proficient at flying the L19. But very likely there is still a teasing worry in the back of your mind. What will I do if something unusual happens? We're going to try to get rid of that worry right now.
That's right. I was flying when you guys were learning to ride a bike. Let me show you fellas something. Put that guy who was flying back on. Hey, you with the yellow hat. Roll that bird dog into a turn. And when you get it set, just take your hands and feet off everything. Just let go. It's okay. Do like I say. Okay now, let go. You ain't gonna fall out of the sky. Now, watch this. See? With hands off, that bird dog says, "Gee, I wonder where the pilot went." Then he begins to think this bank is a pretty silly position to be in up there all by himself. So he decides to level off and just fly along till the pilot gets back from his coffee break. Us bird dogs are stable characters. We believe in the straight and level. That's what experience does for you.
Can you recover from any attitude?
Well, if I'm rigged right and got enough altitude.
But it does help to have a pilot who knows what he's doing.
Sure it does, if he's smooth.
Then you'll approve of our next subject. It's one where good coordination really shows up. We're going to discuss steep turns, a maneuver that will help to develop your sense of orientation, control touch, and confidence in your airplane. A 90-degree turn using a shallow or medium bank requires good coordination. But a turn that continues for 360 degrees with a 50-degree bank is really a test of coordination.
You're going to separate the bike riders from the aviators.
Right, bird dog. In a steep turn, you must maintain constant altitude, and you must roll out on the same heading you were originally flying. Here's a tip that will help you with that. Before you roll into a steep turn, spot a landmark straight ahead of you at a distance, like this crossroad. It will help you to orient yourself as you roll out. Roll into the turn just as you would for a normal turn, but continue to increase the bank smoothly until you have about 50 degrees of bank. As you pass the point of medium bank, add throttle as necessary to maintain a safe airspeed. With the turn established, you must increase back pressure to offset the loss of lift. During the turn, maintain the desired angle of bank just as you would in level flight. Each aileron adjustment must be accompanied by a rudder adjustment throughout the turn. Cross-check your altimeter for altitude control. Your elevator controls your altitude in a steep turn. To make it easy, remember one thing. There is no change in effect of any of your controls in a steep turn. All of your controls are used to manipulate the aircraft just as though you were in straight and level flight. As you come around, remember to use your landmark. Release back pressure smoothly as you decrease your bank, coordinating aileron and rudder pressure to avoid skidding or slipping. Power is decreased as you roll out of the turn.
Can I say something here?
What is it, bird dog?
I got a theory. I think once a guy's got steep turns down pat, he really gets to relax in a plane.
That's why we're going to discuss stalls and spins next to give the students confidence in you.
Good.
First, let's find out what a stall is. In flight, there is a constant stream of air moving across your wings. It is parallel to your movement, and it's called the relative wind. The chord of your wing and the relative wind form an angle called the angle of attack. By varying the angle of attack, you can change the amount of lift on your wings. But if you increase the angle of attack too far, smooth airflow over your wing is disrupted, and less lift is produced. This loss of lift is called a stall. A stall can be abrupt and violent, but usually there are warning signs before it occurs. Performance and control response seem mushy or sluggish. Various kinds of stalls are practiced in flight training. The climbing stall, both straight and turning. The gliding stall, also straight and turning. And the landing attitude stall. First, we will deal with the climbing stall. When the angle of attack is increased beyond the angle of greatest lift, the aircraft will stall. As you approach the stall, you will feel the aircraft buffet. Apply full throttle and simultaneously relax back pressure on the stick as the stall occurs. The nose of the aircraft will drop. Reapply enough back pressure on the stick to recover without entering a secondary stall or losing excessive altitude. As soon as you have regained sufficient airspeed, adjust the throttle and elevators to maintain level flight. The gliding stall can be recovered in exactly the same way by adding full throttle and relaxing back pressure on the stick. You can also make a gliding recovery from a gliding stall. Establish a glide. Then slowly raise the nose of the aircraft. As the stall occurs, relax back pressure on the stick. The nose will drop. With this attitude, you will quickly regain airspeed. Re-establish your normal glide attitude after attaining the proper glide speed. The landing attitude stall is next. Learning to recover from this maneuver may save you from piling up a bird dog. Here's a pilot rounding out too high. He holds the three-point attitude attempting to touch down. He feels the first warning sign of a stall. His reaction is immediate. A stall close to the ground calls for immediate stall recovery. You will practice landing attitude stalls at a safe altitude. As with any maneuver involving change of course or altitude, you will clear the area thoroughly. Establish a normal glide. Then, lower flaps. Now maintain your heading carefully and bring the plane to a three-point attitude and a stall at the same instant. As you feel the stall, immediately apply full throttle and release back pressure to break the stall. Then reapply back pressure as necessary to prevent excessive loss of altitude. As you regain sufficient airspeed, assume a climbing attitude. Don't pull up too quickly or you may stall again. As you climb out, reduce flaps to 0 degrees and level off. Continue to practice recovery from landing attitude stalls at a safe altitude until you know you can perform one safely at 15 feet. Now let's move on to another confidence maneuver, spins. Let's watch this plane as it is maneuvered into a stall and then a spin. A spin is actually a prolonged stall in which the aircraft rotates around its center of gravity while losing altitude. The L19 does not spin violently, and if you let go of your controls, it will recover by itself, provided it has sufficient altitude. Let's start our study of practice spins by looking at this L19 in a power-off stall. Notice that the elevators are up and the rudder is at its limit of travel to one side. This is how you induce a spin. Since the aircraft is in a stalled condition, the nose will fall with the elevators up. The rudder position will cause the aircraft to turn and enter a normal spin. Be sure that your ailerons are kept neutral throughout the spin. To recover, apply full opposite rudder to stop the rotation, then relax back pressure on the stick. As the rotation stops, neutralize the rudder. Back pressure on the stick returns you to level flight, but don't pull back abruptly or you may enter a secondary stall. A spin with power on is essentially the same as with power off. A higher angle of pitch is necessary to cause the aircraft to stall, and you must close your throttle just as the spin starts.
That was good, narrator. I could watch them bird dogs spin all day.
Glad you liked it, Bird Dog. Are you ready for your brief and comprehensive review?
Sure. Bring on the pictures. It's nice for a bird dog to have a good pilot at the controls when he's in a maneuver. But if he's got enough air under him, he can be depended on to straighten out and fly right all by himself. Remember that. It'll be good for your morale. Steep turns are just like any turn. They just feel more hairy until you get used to them. If you want to come out where you went in, always select a prominent checkpoint. Go into a steep turn just like any turn, but add a little throttle to keep your airspeed up. Remember, there's nothing different about your controls in a steep turn. Use them just the way you do in level flight. Your precision ain't gonna be very precise the first few times you roll out, but keep trying. You'll get the knack. A stall is when you get your angle of attack too high. That's the clue. If you try to get more lift than the plane's got, you're gonna stall. The trick of getting out of a stall is to get the angle of attack back where it belongs. Remember this picture when you're practicing landing attitude stalls. Even though you're way up here, make believe you only got 15 feet under you. Spins may be confusing at first. That's why you practice them.
Thanks, Bird Dog. The confidence maneuvers we've studied today will give you a lot of assurance when we get into Part 5 of this series. In Part 5, we will deal with takeoffs, landings, and traffic patterns.